Josephine. Before I get started in describing our initiative, I'm first going to discuss its origin. Both the December 2014 Secretary of Defense Memorandum and the 2015 Commandant's Planning Guidance emphasize the importance of first-line supervisors. As a result, Headquarters Marine Corps SAPR wanted to hear from these first-line supervisors in the fleet, so we were able to create prevention and education materials tailored to these first-line supervisors and also the Marines that they lead. And with that, the NCO summits were born. We conducted 2 NCO summits. We had one in March of 2016 at Camp Pendleton, and then we went to Camp Lejeune in May of 2016. The goal of these NCO summits was to enhance first-line supervisor skills and knowledge with regard to SAPR. And for the planning and execution of these summits, it's important to note that they were planned for nearly a year with all relevant stakeholders to include commands, SARCs in the fleet, headquarters staff, such as our Sergeant Major and SAPR and Behavioral Health, community counseling centers at each location, as well as the VLCs. And I firmly believe that these summits were successful primarily due to the advanced planning and the collaboration of all the stakeholders I just described. At the summits, we had 62 NCOs aboard Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. We had Marines there traveled from Okinawa so they could attend. At Camp Lejeune, we had 65 NCOs attend. We had NCOs attend from Florida at this location. And at both locations, we had representation from MAR4 Res. The summits were framed across 5 functional areas, which were myths and misconceptions, barriers to reporting, retaliation, alcohol, and suicide. So with that, we also had a strong behavioral health involvement in these summits and traveled with at least 2 personnel from the headquarters level from behavioral health. The NCOs then formed working groups and developed courses of action pertaining to each of the 5 areas. Within each working group, we had a subject matter expert, whether uniformed or civilian, and we had at least 1 uniform victim advocate. Additionally, for the duration of the summits, we had multiple UVAs. We had upwards of 5 to 6 attend the entire summit, and we had SARCs. On the last day of the summit, NCO representatives from each working group briefed local command teams on the proposed courses of action, and then after that, local command teams then engaged in a guided discussion with all of the NCO participants. The feedback we received from the NCOs was extensive and impressive. I can honestly say that they exceeded all of our expectations on what we would receive from them. The list I'm about to describe is just a snapshot of their efforts. So for myths and misconceptions, they asked that we weave SAPR training into all professional military education. They also asked that we increase the number of SAPR uniform victim advocates. The majority of our NCOs wanted more than 2 uniform victim advocates in each battalion. They thought that the headquarters level should host SAPR symposiums across the entire Marine Corps because the NCOs thoroughly enjoyed being a part of the solution. As opposed to just being trained, they wanted to help fix the problem. They wanted to integrate SAPR into safety stand-downs with unit-level leadership. Then with regard to barriers to reporting, they wanted to create a public service campaign to address barriers to reporting. They wanted to establish required classes or workshops at each installation, and they wanted to create guided discussions to be used at the unit level. A lot of the courses of action that all of our NCOs developed, they emphasized unit level leadership. They said that they didn't want to hear from their higher leadership. They wanted to hear from their direct supervisors and the Marines that they see on a day-to-day basis. A note regarding retaliation, something we noticed at both summits across the board was that our NCOs had a really difficult time understanding what retaliation was. We gave our definitions that we have on maltreatment, ostracism, and reprisal, and it was really difficult for them to frame it in a way that it made sense, to the point where we were reading testimony from the JPP just to give them a real-life account on how retaliation impacted somebody. So that was something we're definitely taking back from a headquarters perspective, just to ensure that how we're communicating retaliation with our younger service members is in a language that's more understandable and digestible. So one of the large focuses for the COAs for retaliation was on leadership. Our NCO strongly felt that if you possess strong leadership qualities, it can prevent retaliation, such as knowing your Marines, so you're able to know a change if they're experiencing retaliation. They also talked about the presence on social media and how important it was for the higher headquarters to have a true understanding of how the at-risk demographic uses social media, so we're able to address it. They want to implement training specific to sexual assault and retaliation in local PME schools and academies. And as you can see, another group also suggested that. They wanted to implement section level training and guided discussions. And they also wanted a say in the selection of SAPR uniform victim advocates. And the reason they said this is because they felt that a commander may have a different idea of a Marine who's approachable than the at-risk demographic. So they felt that they should have a say on who's selected to ensure that the people who may be utilizing their services, they felt were approachable. For alcohol, we noticed a trend in that a lot of our Marines didn't understand collateral misconduct. And so they wanted to ensure that all Marines are educated on the policy for collateral misconduct by a victim preceding the sexual assault. And they wanted to implement realistic training by using real-life scenarios that emphasize social drinking, peer-to-peer intervention, and one-on-one mentorship. Our NCOs, they didn't want to see actors in a video. They wanted to see actual Marines because they stated they're always able to tell if it's an actor as opposed to a Marine. For suicide, they wanted to make training more realistic by invoking emotions. And then an interesting thing that the NCOs did at our Camp Pendleton Summit was pull the policy for sexual assault and then pull the policy for suicide. And they pulled our Marine Corps orders and cross-reference how many times each word appeared in each of the respective orders. And they thought that we needed to do a better job to cross-reference policy associated with sexual assault and suicide. So if they needed help with one topic or the other, they knew where to go. They also thought that we should enhance accession training by starting with poolees and adding to the boot camp agenda. And then utilize an all-Marine message from the Commandant to pave the way for unit building activities while encouraging NCOs to have an off-duty impact on their junior Marines. When we were evaluating the summits after they occurred as well as they were occurring, we were very impressed with the buy-in from the Marines who attended. Some of the Marines volunteered to go, some of them were told by their command to go, and it was amazing seeing the transformation of them from the first day to the last day, not only with their knowledge base, but just how they took ownership of the problem and were working to solve it. So before I continue, I'm going to just give you a few quotes that we received from some of our NCOs on the importance of the summit in their own words. One, we asked, how did the summit improve or impact your ability to lead Marines? And one said, I was recently placed in a deputy FRO position, and I feel that the summit has given me the knowledge and confidence to be able to help Marines and spouses who may be victims of sexual assault. Since I have now been educated on retaliation, I can look out and protect anyone who may fall victim. Then we asked another Marine, what was the most surprising thing you learned from the summit? And he said, the most surprising thing I learned was that alcohol statistics are significantly less than what was perceived. Whenever we do any type of fleet engagements, a question we typically ask is how many sexual assaults do you think involved alcohol? And we typically get somewhere in the mid-90s percentile. So when they hear the true percentage of how many sexual assaults involved alcohol, it's typically very surprising. We also asked, again, how does this impact your ability to lead Marines, particularly as it relates to misconduct in general? Another Marine said, the summit can improve how I lead by having the accurate information I can inform Marines and to put a stop to any myths I hear, also explaining how a victim may receive support from the command. Then finally, we had a sergeant say that the summit completely changed my perspective on SAPR, and I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity. I always knew sexual assault was a major problem in the military, and specifically within the Marine Corps, but I never realized how really devastating it is. I was absolutely shocked when I learned that almost 80% of Marines surveyed anonymously said they would not report a sexual assault. That fact, along with many others, really shifted my focus so that I can be more cognizant around my own unit. I feel that the summit really opened my eyes to the rampant myths about sexual assault and, more importantly, taught me how to dispel them among my junior Marines. So the buy-in we received from the NCOs in the fleet was impressive, again, mainly because they were excited about being part of the solution. Also, the value of the effort was that it prompted leaders to speak out about sexual assault. At the second summit we held, leaders then continued the discussion across their area of responsibility after the summits concluded and at various events around their installation. And then also, headquarters is being given an opportunity to tailor our prevention and education materials to the at-risk demographic and NCOs in a language that they understand and in the method of delivery that they want. So after these summits, what are our next steps? So Headquarters Marine Corps SAPR has taken for action all of the proposed COAs by the NCOs with an estimated completion and implementation date of December of 2016. There is a chance it could be done sooner. However, December 2016 is our goal. And then we're also in the process of discussing future summits. If money was not an object, we would love to have company grade officer summits as well as staff NCO summits. So we're not entirely sure how that's going to pan out. However, we do have more plans to engage with the fleet of various ranks to ensure that our materials are customized to their needs.
Thank you, Christine. At this time, I just would like to address our audience today with a discussion question, and then we just ask that you put your responses over to the right-hand side, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you post. So given what was presented today from our guests from the Headquarters Marine Corps, do you think there would be value in conducting a similar summit for your service or location? And I can see that earlier there was a couple of programs mentioned that are already being instituted at our installations, like the Lifting the Fog, for example. Army's got Not in My Squad, and then I heard I saw a couple of other ones there listed. So just appreciate you guys sharing that. And then also this gives us an opportunity for everybody who's attending. We will share any links or information that we get about other programs that are similar to this. We believe that people are probably doing a lot of these similar efforts, may not have done it just the way you did it, and we can all share and do some lessons learned amongst each other. So I can see there that we've got, yes, there would be value added, especially for the Marine, for those reservists, Army. Yeah, so definitely I can see that everybody would like to see something more. We ourselves were very interested to hear that these summits were going to be conducted, especially at the locations that you chose. Christine, I'd like to ask you one question. What were some of the barriers that you had when you were trying to get leadership buy-in? Not so much the installations that you wanted to go to, but some of the barriers in trying to get leadership to even think about funding an effort like this, not really knowing what the outcome was going to be.
Well, the great thing about these summits is we had a lot of subject matter expertise within headquarters. So the only cost that was incurred was the cost of travel. So that removed a large barrier where instead of utilizing subject matter experts we would have to pay, we utilized the subject matter expertise within our command, which reduced costs. However, I can tell you that because we planned these so far in advance, because we had the buy-in from our leadership so far in advance, our sergeant major collaborated with all of the sergeants majors at the locations where we go, to include locations where we did not go. And because we did so much advanced planning, because we had the SARCs and the fleet involved in the planning, it broke down a lot of barriers. But I can tell you a challenge we did run into is that when we did our letter of intent from the headquarters level to solicit participants, we were a little too prescriptive. And that's because we wanted a diverse set of NCOs that covered all MOSs, had both genders, and because of that, we were a little more prescriptive. So if we did them again, we would just say, from this command, please give us 20 NCOs, for example. So we did run into that. And then also a barrier we ran into was scheduling. A lot of the commands wanted to attend, but had so many other conflicting priorities that it made it difficult. However, when all of this came together, the buy-in we had from our participants as well as the command teams around each installation was incredible.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think it's helpful to understand that when we, at the SAPR stakeholder levels, when we're trying to say, hey, well, let's go do a study or let's go do a summit or a focus group, I think oftentimes we don't understand on the ground at the operational and tactical levels, a typical day for them, it's difficult to find even an hour for them to come and join you in a cafeteria or another room to do, in order to do the interviews, or if you're having them break out in working groups, I can imagine. So did you think there was enough synergy with the group that was there together? Did it look like, I mean, did it matter what rank they were in terms of participation, or were they pretty open to the concept of being able to just brainstorm different ideas?
I can tell you the first day, and another thing that helped is of the headquarters participants who traveled, the same people went to both summits. So I think that also allowed for cohesiveness, and we wanted to be able to generalize our results across both summits. So it was very important to us that the headquarters personnel were the same between each summit. I can tell you on the first day of each summit at both locations, all of the NCOs in the audience looked at us like, great, we're about to get SAPR'd again. So when they heard, and even when they heard our briefs, which were much more interactive, not talking down on them, we can see them have a little bit more buy-in. And then when we broke into the working groups, when they really realized that we were there to listen to them and we were not there to talk down to them or to lecture them, they jumped right in. And in each working group, a leader established himself, which is typical when you're around a bunch of Marines. There's always going to be that one leader.
Great. We just had a couple of questions that they were in our chat box, and I'll just read it out loud. Record this, obviously, mission, but is it possible to record it and then take it to another, maybe send it electronically to the
Something that we did is we were very, very protective of the Marines when they were in a working group. We wanted them to be able to share ideas without fear of who was watching them. And that's why we were very specific that there would be one subject matter expert in the group because we wanted to make sure they stayed on task. And then there would be a uniformed victim advocate just in case. But we were very clear during the working group phase. We did not want any media. We did not want any cameras because we thought that that would stifle their communication. However, at the brief back, which was the majority of the last day, we did record all of their brief backs. So we had still photography, and then we also had all of the brief backs recorded that we're then incorporating. We haven't figured out exactly how we want to use that yet. We did do an extensive after action report that was promulgated to all of our SARCs in the fleet. So they are aware, they were all aware from A to Z on how these summits occurred. So we are keeping them involved. And there are some also who would like to conduct a summit on their own.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I had one last question there that we'll address, and it was how many days was the summit that you conducted, and was it the same at both locations?
Each summit was 3 days. We were definitely able to put everything in that 3 day period. I think if we did it again, it might behoove us to extend it. I think that these NCOs could have stayed in their working groups discussing COAs for a whole nother day. And I know specifically for the retaliation working group, mainly because I was the subject matter expert in each working group for retaliation, it took me almost a full day to get them to understand it enough to develop COAs. So we could benefit from another day. However, the work ethic of these Marines and how they got going and hit the ground running made it absolutely doable within the 3 days, to include allowing them time to practice briefing before they got in front of their command teams.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. I have one last question for our participants, and that is, what are your thoughts on some of the responses that were received from the non-commissioned officers that, I guess some of the quotes that you said earlier in terms of, one, it changed their whole perspective on the topic by itself. So just if you all could just type in some of your thoughts on that, and then we'll move on. Okay, those are populating, so we'll give them time to just come through. Um, Interesting, Alex. You said it was mind blowing. I think it would be. One, it was great that you all knew going in which myths you wanted to basically bust, because that perception is why a lot of, not just Marines, but across the department, why a lot of service members find themselves like, wow, I didn't even know that was considered a UCMJ punishable crime. We were just playing around. And I think that realization in this kind of environment is valuable rather than a real life scenario, and the consequences of that could mean their entire career. So great. Thank you all for posting your responses on that. I appreciate that. Part of our webinars is that they have to be interactive and we have to get you engaged. So we try to do that with a couple of those discussion questions. So again, thank you, Christine. We appreciate you taking the time today to join us and to share the results of this effort that you all did. It was a service effort, and I'm glad that you all were able to share the information so that we can all leverage what you the knowledge that you gained from that. So we now would like to shift gears a little bit, and we'll move on to our next speaker. Some of you that have attended our webinars in the past are very familiar with this next speaker, and that is Army Major Jeremy Kerfoot. He has been our sexual assault prevention officer here at SAPRO. He is the senior Army liaison to the DoD SAPRO office, and he's responsible for strategic planning, research and development of prevention techniques, and the implementation of the department's prevention line of effort. He has been responsible for strategies tied to the current strategic plan, early education, and our ROTC programs. And his education started with a double bachelor's degree in political science and history at Virginia Tech, followed by his master's in business and organizational security studies at Webster University in St. Louis. He's a graduate of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College here in D.C., and his bio is available down in the files if you want to download that a little bit later. So without any other delays, Major Kerfoot, I will turn it over to you.
Wow, who was that guy she was talking about? Hey, Josephine, thank you for the kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be joining you again. I've heard many times over the last couple of years from SARCs and leaders alike that prevention is something everyone wants to do. We can get stuck on how to do it. 2 years in the making, I was tasked with developing a sexual assault prevention guide that could help give leaders in the field tactics and techniques that help develop, bolster, and amplify existing prevention occurring at the unit level. As I've scanned DoD, there are many SAPR guides from each of the services that exist that focus on the response side of SAPR, telling commanders what they must do in order to take care of a victim. It was quickly realized that the prevention guides are in short order, not just in DoD, but across the spectrum of our SAPR space. The guide I will be talking about today was developed to meet the need of commanders and leaders in the field in order to operationalize prevention concepts and elements. As you can see from the slide in front of you, SAPRO conducted surveys and interviews with commanders to see what they wanted to know and how they wanted to receive the information. Contained in the guide is the fruit of our efforts up here at SAPRO, and it will not only arm commanders with prevention ideas, but will give SARCs and practitioners in the field ideas to execute or advise leaders of. You can read here on the right side of the slide about the guide's official purpose. And by the way, if you haven't, in the download section of the files, you can find the draft copy of the Commander's Guide. Again, this is not fully releasable, but it's something for you to review. Give your input back to me. That would be much appreciated in the SAPRO team up here. But our targeted audience is commanders and senior enlisted advisors at the 03 to 05 level for most services. That would be, for an Army guy speaking, first sergeants and sergeant majors as well. These are the service leaders that are on the ground executing missions and have the most responsibility for implementing the SAPR program. Recognizing the unique role of SARCs to commanders in the field, you will find useful information as well to be able to fulfill your advising roles to senior leaders. The guide provides the background of sexual assault perpetration within the military, some information to better inform leaders of what they should be talking about and how to talk about it. The latter portion provides actionable tasks to operationalize each of the 10 elements of the current DoD sexual assault prevention strategy. The guide is a mix of education and action for the reader and is intended to be only a beginning point. This guide does not constrain any ideas to think of other ways to operationalize prevention, merely initial concepts to get everyone thinking. We had to balance a short enough read to entice leaders to pick up the guide because they are busy people and look at it, versus an exhaustive concordance of prevention concepts. So we're, in its current form, about 21 pages, and we think that's about right. Now we will walk through some of the top line parts of the Commander's Guide. Defining the scope of the problem helps arm leaders with the magnitude of the issue of sexual assaults in the military. Looking at the graphic here, on the left of this graphic, you'll notice that the current prevalence rate is from the 2014 WGRA surveying to the force. This is just a top-line number, something that you as SARCs and victim advocates and practitioners are probably already familiar with. DoD is currently surveying again for 2016 prevalence, which data will be disclosed. And by the way, as a reminder, please inform your units that if they do receive the WGRA survey, to go ahead and take it. As we need more responses, we'll make it better data. In the middle of this graphic, you will find some risk factors for victimization and gender-specific data that commanders can use to talk with their units about the topic of sexual assault. And write additional information we know about sexual assault perpetration. Again, this data is general in nature and not a hard fact. Anyone, I mean anyone, can be a victim or an offender. There is no more complete what the offender looks like profile. Sprinkled throughout the guide are the Talk About It sections. Here, the intent is to give leaders and SARCs additional background information so they can talk about the topic with their subordinates and leaders in order to educate the unit population. The example here shows some data on bystander intervention from a unit DOCS, or Command Climate Assessment, if you're unfamiliar with the DOCS term, and how to better talk about the data to unit members. You can also see an example of a commander's action box, that orange portion at the bottom, which provides examples of actions to take to bolster prevention activities of sexual assaults within a unit or organization. I led Josephine wrong. That star should have moved when I talked about it. Go PowerPoint skills. All right. Many of you in attendance today may have seen the continuum harm graphic in various forms with SAPRO communications or even briefings. The continuum remains a good tool to explain the spectrum of behaviors that could lead to sexual assaults in a unit. It depicts the honest depth of the problem, which is that green box there, realizing that of 100 people in a unit, there's probably only 1 or 2 that are going to commit something as heinous as a sexual assault. But the problem is still real. And using this graphic, we also want to attempt to show various behaviors that potentially lead to the crime of sexual assault. So that's what you see in the rainbow colors to the right. Using this tool to show your leaders or unit members may be a great way to show them that even low-lying non-criminal behavior, such as jokes, harassment, may snowball into larger readiness impacting behaviors down the line. goal within any organization should be to have a healthy command climate that leads to mission productivity. As mentioned before, the DEOCS, or the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute Organizational Climate Survey, is a confidential, command-requested organizational development survey focusing on issues of equal opportunity and effectiveness. Many of you are already familiar with these, I'm sure, but it remains a valuable tool for commanders and leaders to understand the climate of their organization and the impact of certain factors within the unit. Every commander must conduct a DEOCS within 90 days of taking command, and its analysis provides valuable insight to commanders within the guide. We have tried to succinctly explain the analysis of the DEOCS report, which you see before you, and how it can be used to develop a prevention plan in a unit. Ultimately, commanders are held accountable for how they are handling command climate issues by their higher headquarters, and unit members will certainly want to know and see responsiveness to their concerns. So I'll walk you through the chart if you can see it. Hopefully you can. But you're going to get a printout, and the colorful chart in front of you is specifically just the SAPR-related DEOCS categories. But to highlight the middle portion there where it talks about men and women and walking across through the zones of perceived barriers. You can see a red, it looks like a 29% or so. Just to highlight, you as a SARC or a commander reading something like this, the 29% indicates a statistic that there may be women in this unit who perceive barriers to reporting allegations of sexual assault. So this is kind of data that you get back at the local level, at the unit level, that can be very informing as you plan prevention concepts at the local level. Also, just on the extreme right side, down towards the bottom, you see a bunch of green circled. Where there's green, that means good. They've made it simple for all of us to read. And these statistics indicate that the military population in the organization are knowledgeable on sexual assault reporting options. So you, if you're giving SAPR training or advising on training, maybe you do a brief discussion on reporting options, but your unit population at this time knows all about that. So move on to another topic that will keep your group engaged. And that's a big point as to why, if you're doing good in green area, keep it up, but let's move on to a red area, or in this case, a blue area, which is kind of squishy. We might need to do something. Is there any questions about the DEOCS? And I agree, Darcy, that the DEOCS does help tailor discussion questions for the group, because normally after every DEOCS analysis, it is encouraged by DOMI to conduct focus groups to get at the meat and the crux of the problems that might be surfacing in it. Oh, and I'm reading a comment. It's sad that some have to learn the hard way that rather than listen in training and take what the SARCs and VAs are telling them serious. That's true. And as Christina mentioned in her brief about being SAPR'd, we know that's real up here. We understand that. And, it's an opportunity for us to try to find innovative ways to present material in a new light to our populations. Because we want them to maintain engagement for sure. And it's tough. So hopefully something like this guide will help you guys with some ideas on how to get after it without being felt SAPR'd. And so there's a question by Schaefer, I believe, about the guide. It is close hold. I wouldn't go about distributing it to everybody. You guys are a special population. We do want feedback from you, so please provide that. We expect, and you'll see a slide it later, but about the November timeframe of the official release of this guide. Moving on. With the guide, we want to reiterate that there are several ways to get after prevention, and there's not only a silver bullet to defeat this crime. We highlight healthy command climate spectrum, as you can see to the right, with the green, yellow, and red. The prevention approach brought out in the current DoD sexual assault prevention strategy. Again, majority of the prevention will focus only on a small portion of the unit or population. Again, those people in yellows and reds, smaller group. But those are that, certainly in the yellow, that might be on the fence and are in need of innovative ways of reminding, hey, you should not engage in this kind of opportunistic or coercive activities. So within the guide, a majority of tips such as having leaders be in touch with the microclimates are recommended throughout as a means to better understand current unit dynamics that contribute to the readiness impacting behaviors. Unit leaders must understand the prevention concepts, and then, so once they understand those concepts, and then they tailor their prevention programs to their specific unit needs, which each unit have unique populations, terrain, and factors that contribute to the issue of sexual assault. Not every unit is made the same. A small section of the guide discusses the impact of digital communication to the command climate. As you may know, in recent news, you've probably heard of instances of cyberbullying within the military and how the services have been dealing with it, not really just in the military, but in society writ large. While the services maintain policy control over social media for their service members, those executing a prevention plan need to have a good awareness of how their unit members are communicating and how they receive information. Understanding communication within the unit climate in the social media realm will help leaders understand the culture they are facing, whether it's positive or negative. Again, many of us might, throw up a Facebook page, but to be honest, are a lot of people engaging with you on that Facebook page, or are there other ways to get messages out? Or on other interfaces such as Yik Yak, are there things being said by the unit population that are derogatory in nature to the command or the programs being presented? So having an awareness of that climate will be helpful as you implement a prevention plan at the local level.
Okay, Major, if I could just for a second, a couple of to reiterate are just as important. Sorry, now can you hear me better? One of the comments was that EEO always gets called when the DOCS, and we want to make sure that not just the EEO, that it's also the SARC, because some of those behaviors can be addressed with both of those offices. And one of the comments was that this was useful downrange, and a big push from the field from what's mentioned here is that social media is huge, and there isn't enough guidance to talk about what are we doing with digital communications, not just what's going on at the service level, but how is it being used from our leadership. So that was one of the comments. I just wanted to acknowledge that we saw that, and I believe we would agree that that is one of the major issues.
No, absolutely. And the proliferation of technology out there, it's getting harder and harder for leaders to really get at how to communicate, I think, sometimes. So a few months back, we had a webinar that covered how to speak to millennials. So it's a thing that we have to be aware of. And I'm glad some people are piping up in the chat box about the Yik Yak. I had to look it up myself. But yeah, Lud is correctly right on what Yik Yak is. And again, you're right. The MEOs tend to get called on the DOCS report, but this goes back to making sure that we as SARCs and victim advocates have a great leadership to not kick the door down, to understand and make that commander understand the need for healthy unit climate contains both EO and sexual assault prevention principles. So you coming in as a combined force and advising the commander of ways they can prevent, I think, will be useful in making yourself ever present as well. And I think if we move on to the next slide, I want to discuss the collaboration part of prevention. In previous webinars that we've given, I've kind of hounded on this, but you're not alone. Prevention is a collaboration effort, and your involvement is critical to prevention efforts. Not a job, and I know some of you out there might feel that way. But as you look at the circle of trust there, right now we've surrounded it with unit leaders, but in the purples and blues, all have a part in helping unit leaders see prevention, okay? And you're really looking for that coalition of partnerships to help with your prevention program on not just a SAPR topic, but the harassment part of it as well, or retaliation, and that's what we're getting to talk about here today. Again, there are many personnel that help support you and your unit that can be benefit to bolstering and supporting the prevention program. Again, collaboration with internal and external experts can maximize your efforts to engage unit members. If the unit members always see the SARC coming down the hallway and immediately go into their offices and try to not show their face around the SARC, then is a chaplain more well received for a SAPR type? The chaplain's supposed to be the heart and soul of the organization. So if you have that available to you, have the chaplain go around and do mini focus groups in the hallway. Hey, how you doing today? And what do you think about creating a healthy command climate, or whatever the microclimate, whatever the micro message is. Entrust those trusted partners and collaborators to get that message out for you as well. Again, around the circle of trust is not an exhaustive list of collaborators. There might be more. Installation or higher headquarters resources can help support and inform a unit prevention plan. And then again, I want to redirect you back to the consulting existing information websites such as DOMI's Assessment to Solutions and the SAPR Connect that can also provide insight on prevention. All right, and now we're going to get to the latter half of the prevention guide, and it deals with operationalizing the prevention elements. Sexual assault prevention is like almost any other program that tries to influence behaviors and promote helpful attitudes. You will need a combination of initiatives to be effective. There's no single solution. However, the benefit comes from a locally developed plan customized to your unit. The DoD Sexual Assault Prevention Strategy lays out 10 core elements of a successful prevention program. These elements are depicted as interconnected building blocks because no single approach will offer enduring solutions. Implementing some or all of the prevention elements into your plan will provide multiple forms of influence on individuals within the unit. And much like a puzzle depicted here, these elements complement each other to form an overall prevention program. And now we're going to go over only a few of the elements and provide examples of what's contained in the guide. So I picked out 4. First one's going to be leadership involvement. In any military organization, the commander is the center of gravity. That's the source of power that provides moral, physical strength, freedom of action, and the will to act. Commanders will also organize resources with requisite skills and expertise, aka SARCs, aka chaplain, aka JAG, that help support in the SAPR space, while they also provide the vision and guidance for a successful prevention program. So, to the commanders that are reading the guide, does your command staff take sexual misconduct allegations seriously and set the example for appropriate behavior? And you can see there, I've provided a couple of tasks that we list as ways to operationalize the strategy. What you can see there. So what do you think of those 2 tactics? I mean, speak often and decisively to your unit about respect and dignity. That nowhere in there says about sex assault. But I guarantee that has an impact on our space. And then provide new unit members with a trusted and trained sponsor for safe and successful integration to the unit. So what do you think of those 2 tactics? Anybody? And again, some of these examples are common sense, but sometimes we need to be reminded of what to do or what to add to our unit SOPs or activities to boost prevention. And again, advising those commanders and leaders to provide a vision for the program is probably one of the first things you could do as a SARC in advising your leaders. Because if there's no vision that bookends the program, you will not get as far as you need. All right, and in the guide, we've also defined each element, which you see in this particular slide, the lower right-hand corner, to make the reader more aware of the prevention element and what we mean, at least at the DoD SAPR level, what leadership involvement in the prevention context after. I agree there at Schaefer. Commanders do need to model respect as well. All right, number 2 of the 4 that we're going to go over briefly is peer-to-peer mentorship. Again, from our perspective, as we look over research and data, information is transferred and received more effectively among two people when the encounter is both face-to-face and when they are similar to one another or can relate at some level. So that's why we're talking about peer-to-peer, E4 to E4, or near-peer, E4 to E5. Those kind of interactions. Again, Major Kerfoot talking to an E3 is not going to have the same impact as E3 talking to E4 about the same issue if we have the right messaging. Information is most influential when it's based on a subjective evaluation of others who are similar to the recipient. While broadcast communication and unit-wide email can reach a large audience, aka formation discussions, communications targeted to a specific subset of your unit population and messages from peers are likely to be, and this is where we talk about understanding your microclimates. These messages and programs should be transmitted peer-to-peer whenever possible with reinforcement and support leaders. Notice in the peer-to-peer element, we are more involvement of the NCO Corps. Again, this is not just a commander's program to implement. Senior enlisted advisors have valuable contributions to prevention. And you can see there the tasks that we might suggest. Again, there's several more in the actual guide itself, but not an exhaustive list. But training first-line supervisors to promote desired values and appropriate behaviors. And then create leveraged junior enlisted advocacy groups. We have CSED. I know the Army has the better opportunities for single soldiers, the BOSS program. So how are we using those programs to get our SAPR messages out? Are we tied to our peer program leads at the installation level or at the unit level? So these are just several ways that we can think of about getting after the peer-to-peer mentorship element of prevention. All right, communications. That's what we're going to look at today. And again, if I was talking to a commander, as a commander, they need to be aware that of their own communication style and approach, regardless of whether they are talking with other commanders, installation leadership, or even their unit. This is not just related to how someone might talk to the media. This relates how you give briefs, handle yourself in small groups, speak to young service members, etc. For example, talking with the service members in a caring, supportive fashion conveys and reinforces to them that you truly care to the issue at hand. So you can see the two tasks that I've highlighted today. The target messages for every audience. Again, if I'm a commander, I'm going to do focus groups with the junior enlisted, E3s, E4s. I'm probably going to have a different question set than I am with the E7s and E8s and E9s in an organization. It goes to the maturity level, it goes to the understanding and education part, and what, and those are going to have to deal with aspects of SAPR related issues, whereas normal Joe at the bottom, E3s, E4s, they're worried about themselves. So how do we get them to consider bystander intervention at that level, while NCOs, help promote those kind of activities, communication activities to their subordinates. Again, keep in mind, the second bullet there, keep in mind that the messenger can often be as important as the message itself. So if I, as a commander, I'm not the strongest guy in front of a formation, but I get that on-fire E7 Sergeant First Class that can really brief up a crowd and get them engaged into a topic, why wouldn't I use them and their strengths to push out messaging? So that's what that kind of says. So what are your thoughts on the second task example? For instance, maybe even younger members engaging the unit. Yep, and for at Schaefer, taking training to their peers, that's in response to the peer mentorship, certainly. I can, go ahead.
So I work with the Army Reserves, and I'm also a retired Marine. Currently, I'm working as the Equal Opportunity Specialist I do have my certification and I'm advocate. I did that part of my retirement just in case. I know which one I want to do, but I'm currently an equal opportunity specialist. And so going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, I think it's important for our sharps and our victim advocates that I work closely with mine. We're talking about the DEOX, to go back to that briefly. When we just recently did DEOX, I went to my sharp to make sure that they could see that portion of the survey so that they could decipher what it meant for them so that we can work together. Because as you said, the part of discrimination can roll into the parts that can become sexual assault. And I know some of our sharps and victim advocates have so much going on with sexual assault, unfortunately, that they, may not have the time to delve into the DEOX. And our commanders are not going to look for our sharps and our victim advocates to do a DEOX survey. They are looking at their EO specialists to do that job. So it may not be so much as going to the commanders to look for that, but to go to your equal opportunity advisors or specialists and saying, hey, when you get that survey back, do you mind calling me in to let me look at that portion? Because what we did, my personnel, is that she looked at that and we did our brief together, as you said, that when we went in as a collaborative effort and said we have this together and we're able to brief the commander to say, this is what we've seen as a whole from the illegal discrimination piece and from the sharp perspective to tell you about the climate as a whole. And as far as briefing your peer group, I think you hit it directly on the head because I as a previous enlisted Marine, I don't believe officers can understand what enlisted go through. That's just what I felt as an enlisted Marine. And I was much more receiving of a message from someone that I saw that walked in my shoes. If I felt that you walked in my shoes, I could better tolerate it as opposed to feeling like I was being talked down to. So as you said, if I got that sergeant first class that can get me and get me motivated, but then when their commander comes in, they're saying that this is important too, because a lot of what I see is the enlisted are coming in saying this is important to the commander, but we don't have that commander coming back reinforcing and saying this is important to me. The enlisted are pushing the surveys, the enlisted are making us go through the classes, and when they come to the sharp classes or they come to the EO classes, the commanders are still behind their desks. The commanders can't make it to the training, and you only see enlisted members sitting in these trainings or going to these classes, and if it's not important to the commander to bring him or her and their staff, the whole command suite, then it must not be that important. So I believe it starts from the top, and I believe that you are really hitting on the head. However, leadership starts from the beginning, and where the head goes, the body will follow. And so the head is going to need to stop only talking, but also take action.
All right, ma'am. Thank you very much. That's good kudos. I appreciate your sharing that. And like she had mentioned, communications goes to verbals and nonverbals. So, I mean, by leadership presence not being at training, that sends a huge message, well, like she said. So I appreciate the discussion, both on the phone and even here in the chat box. We're going to go ahead and move on to our final highlight of the four. Again, it involves community involvement. Reaching out to communities both on and off your installations offer opportunities to expand your program beyond the fence line to achieve sexual assault prevention. Regardless of the size of the installation, interaction with the local community is key to encouraging a community-wide focus on the prevention of such crimes. Here we have listed a couple tasks you'll find in the guide as examples. Again, does your installation have established community-based sexual assault prevention program with local partnerships? That might be something to look into. And then that second one there, encourage intervention with local community to help correct service members headed down the wrong path. This could be as simple as battalion commanders in the Army installation. You know, they have agreements with local establishments they know their soldiers are going to and say, hey, here's my first sergeant, here's my card, here's my command sergeant major's card, business card. Call us if you see any soldiers getting out of line, or you can tell who they are, or maybe it's the local provost marshal office kind of giving the same thing to local establishments. Say, hey, if you see any soldiers getting out of line, give us a call before it's a problem, and maybe we can intervene. So it's kind of developing those collaborative efforts outside the fence line, but also in the fence line. So we talk about military programs such as family advocacy. Um, they have some overlap within our SAPR space, and they could be equal advocates of our message, and they would encourage a healthy command climate, a unit of an aura of dignity and respect. So they have all kinds of programs that lead towards those ends. So if we can get support from them and reciprocate that we give our support to them as well, and they give it to us, it's a win-win. So as we involve the community in our efforts. So just a reminder that the guide alone is not sufficient to make and implement a prevention program. It's really in concert with existing policy, guidance, and priorities from your commander or higher levels, and then the collaborative efforts that we talked about. The guide can be useful in executing a prevention plan within a unit. All right, so as I mentioned previously, the current guide timeline, currently we are sending this draft guide down to the DOMI Leadership Team Awareness Seminar in September. They're going to provide us feedback, and that's a seminar that includes both commanders and senior enlisted advisors, command teams, and so that's going to be a great group to understand, hey, did we hit it right on the head? Is it useful information, or what do we need to change? In October, we're kind of blocking out for a legal review at the DoD level, and then hopefully by November, we'll publish it to the services. So it all goes back to knowing your part and doing your part, and that is what this guide aims to give commanders, leaders, and SARCs, ideas on what their prevention part could be. Thank you for all your attention during this brief. I will pass it back to Ms. Montoya for some additional discussion. Joe? Yeah, so it's been field tested in a couple different ways. So first of all, when we did the initial survey about a year and a half ago of commanders, we took about 3 to 5 commanders from each service and kind of gave them survey questionnaires. I called them on the phone, conducted a mini focus groups to get their feedback on what they wanted. And then throughout our time over the last year, as it's been drafted, we pushed it out to trusted stakeholders to kind of give us feedback. And then this final culminating, the leadership awareness seminars that we are sending it down to involve specifically command teams, which is our targeted audience. And they'll be giving us feedback through surveying and then a focus group that'll be conducted by SAPRO members that are attending down there.
Market it to get it to the right folks. And let's see, we got a couple other. Yeah, so far no one has said printed in high glossy color with a spiral on it. So thank you very much for that. And you can continue putting your responses there on the right-hand side. And then I just have one more question for our audience today. Given what you've seen today with this prevention commander's guide, do you think you'd be interested in seeing more of this come out at our level, or are you comfortable with whatever your service may be providing you? And you can just post those over to the right. Thank you, Gideon. We appreciate that feedback. We hope that it's helpful for you to understand some of the things that we're trying to get institutionalized. Thank you very much, Lydia, for that. We like to hear that our webinars are awesome. We dream about it, but we never really know if it's really if it's being received very well. So thank you very much for that. Yes, absolutely. I think that the guide should come from leadership. And then there's just a couple more comments there. Stephanie says, this level we can push things and innovate ideas. That is very good. That's very helpful. Great. Okay, so folks, we are getting ready to wrap up here a little bit. I want to say thank you to both of our speakers today for the information that they have provided us. And if there are no specific questions for either Ms. Christine Height for the Marine Corps NCO Summits or for Major Kerfoot, then we will try to wrap up this session and allow you some time to get to the survey and get those responses in. So I see there's just a few more comments being posted there. So basically, today we heard from Ms. Christine Height and the SAPR team on the recent effort to conduct those focus groups and how it was observed and some of their observations that they were able to see, and then they'll be infusing into their overall SAPR program. And certainly we're happy to share with you offline any additional information. And we will have Christine's information if you guys want to hear a little bit more about the LADICs and some of the planning efforts. And then secondly, we heard from Major Kerfoot, which today I'm very sad to say that this will be the last webinar that he will be conducting from here, OSD SAPRO. So we're very sad that he's departing us, but we're very happy about where he's going. Major Kerfoot has been selected to attend the FBI National Academy that is going to be here at Quantico. And then he will change stations from Northern Virginia to the beautiful Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. His contributions here at SAPRO and to our overall SAPR programs have been tremendous, and his infectious energy and enthusiasm will be deeply missed. As a future U.S. Army leader, we hope that this experience with SAPR programs and the understanding of other readiness impacting behaviors has equipped him with the knowledge and the skills he will need to lead the Army of the future. So we want to say thank you very much, Major, for all your support, and we definitely will miss you. I know I will. I mean, you have been the rock behind a lot of these webinars and some of the efforts that we have. And so certainly those that follow in your footsteps are going to have some very big teal boots to fill. So thank you. So at this time, I would just like to remind everybody that if you joined us today, you may or may not have come through SAPR Connect, but I always leave this up for those that are interested in joining our community of practice. This was designed in 2014 to be a collaborative environment. It is CAC enabled. It allows you to have some interaction with your SAPR colleagues from across the services and around the globe. It's available 365, 24/7, as long as you have a CAC, and we post information up there, and other folks who are on there share. We get an average of about 500 users that are participating. So if you want more questions, if you have any questions about that or need more information, you can reach out to me direct. And then lastly, importantly, if you want credit for today, we ask that you please complete the survey. We'll leave the link up there for a while. The certificates will be issued based on the participation in the survey. So we just ask that if you want credit and you need a certificate, when you complete the survey will close about September 30th. And at that point in time, we will collect all the names and emails and start creating those certificates and get them out to you electronically through the email address that you provided. So if there are no other comments or questions,
I just have a question.
hold on, ma'am.
I can't see the link, so since I called in, will it be emailed to the email that you all have on file, or can those of us that called in have the red source, or will it be emailed?
Yes. It will be emailed. So if you, yeah. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, no problems. Again, thank you all very much. I'm just going to go on mute here, and if anybody has any specific questions, we'll leave the chat open for a few more minutes. And then again, we just want to say thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time. The recording of this will be available in approximately 3 hours. And all those that attended, I will send out the link, as well as the link will be posted on SAPR Connect. So for those that missed it, they'll be able to hear the recorded version of this at a later date and still get credit. All right, thank you all very much.